we are live. So welcome back. It always weirds me out that there's a slight delay on these things, so it's going to take about like 30 seconds for anyone to actually see this and begin typing your questions in the chat. But welcome for those of you who have yet to join one of these live Q&A sessions. Basically, the format is I sit here for an hour, you type your Amazon ad questions in the chat, and I give you my best answers. So for anyone watching, if you have any Amazon ad questions, if there's a new update, make sure you type that in the chat, and we'll pull it up on screen. These are always really fun. There's always a ton of questions, and we always give the listeners some really cool answers, which, by the way, we are full swing peak season. I'm not sure if anyone was able to see my post that I put out on LinkedIn. I want to say it was Monday is when I put it out, about now is the time, the shopper frenzy, and the real thing to pay attention to in this time of year is definitely your conversion rates, because conversion rates are upticking. There's more shoppers on the platform. More of those shoppers are converting into sales, which is awesome. That means some products are going to be off season, but for the majority of us that have like any sort of giftable products, you should see, again, massive uptakes in your sales volume. But the thing that you want to pay attention to is those conversion rates. And one really big factor on how your conversion rates are going to perform is going to be your ship times are huge right now across the platform. I know I'm doing a lot of last minute holiday shopping. I'm not those types of people who have everything under control and shopping is done. My mom growing up always had all of the Christmas shopping done by Thanksgiving, and she got to enjoy her holidays. I'm not one of those. I'm one of those last minute shoppers. And so one of the things that we look for is I'm trying to make sure it's going to get here by Christmas, right? I'm having to, on some other platforms on Amazon, I'm paying more ship times right now. So I'm definitely paying for my not so great planning, but you definitely want to pay attention to that, because shoppers are going to be paying attention to that. And as soon as your ship times show as arriving past Christmas, you will see a significant drop in your conversion rates, which, as we know, conversion rates affect everything, sales, but that is going to also affect like ACoS and total ACoS hitting a spike. So we are watching things. If you have historical performance, you can look back on your account. What we'll do is we'll look back what happened last year. So we have one particular account where we're testing some interesting things just to see like how far can we push the sales. And we were looking at our sort of time windows to evaluate when, how far it makes sense to test. We actually went back and we looked at last year's data to determine when we started to see those sales decreases. And for us in that account, it was around the 19th, which means we probably got about a week to push it before we kind of have to start pulling back, because conversion rates are no longer going to be able to support the elevated budgets. So that's one thing I would pay attention to. So we do have a first question, and I super appreciate it. So for, again, anyone listening, feel free to type your Amazon ad questions in the chat. I'm going to pull them up, and we're going to get your questions answered. So the question is, we are cross-border sellers. How do we promote our store instead of a product? Great question. When you say store, feel free to type in the chat a follow-up. Are you talking about your Amazon storefront, or are you talking about like trying to leverage Amazon traffic to promote like an external store? I'm going to assume, because we're talking Amazon here, that you're talking about your Amazon storefronts. And so for those ones, really the only way to promote a storefront is through sponsored brand ads. Now you can do headline ads that also include a video. So that would be any sponsored brands, be it headline ads or be it so the follow-up question is yes, Amazon storefront. Yep. The only way to push traffic to a storefront would be through sponsored brand ads. Good rule of thumb is to, if you can, like, if it depends on how big the brand is, like if you have collections of products, meaning like I have all of my women's workout gear, and then I have all of my running shoes for women, like kind of building out sub pages allows you to be more strategic and sort of curate your collections. And so you said the brands are not yeah, so that's going to create an issue because to be able to have a storefront, you're going to have to be brand registered. So you have the ability to access the storefront. Now you can get licensed to use a brand. I know we have, and to be perfectly frank, I don't know the whole process in that. I just know that we do have some sellers who sell licensed products, but they have been able to get authorized to sell underneath that brand. And so sometimes that might possibly, I would explore that. But again, you're going to have to get authorization from the brand. So if that's a viable solution or not, I'm not sure. But I would say is when it comes to pushing products to stores, you really sponsor brands the only way you're going to push that traffic. That's a lot of products. So it says we have 100 million products. Or 100 million. 10 million is a lot. 100 million is even more. 10 million products. Okay. Yeah, that is a lot. We have an entire process we do. Now, I'm not sure if you're currently selling these products, if you're trying to determine which products to sell, or if you're trying to look to, like, say, push to a storefront to be able to figure out what products are viable to then maybe run additional advertising there. That I'm not sure what the goal is. Again, if you have any follow-up context to this conversation, feel free to drop it in the chat. I'll try and get, I love this clarity in the back and forth. When you're looking to try and figure out which products to even tackle in a catalog this size, I would start with the best sellers. That's never a bad strategy, as much as you want to, like, say, tackle everything all at once. One, the budgets to do that are just going to be astronomical. So I would say if there's always a subsection of the catalog that, yeah. So you're saying we have many ace products which sell more than some of the other. Yeah. I would tackle those best sellers. If you're still having a hard time sort of paring down which products to tackle, this is going to kind of go against all of the good traditional strategies that I always talk about when everyone asks me, like, what's a good launch strategy? So what you're going to want to do in a large catalog is to, say, like, launch everything and treat everything as sort of like a priority one launch, do extensive keyword research, have allocated budgets for that. When you don't have as clear of a picture as to which products are even viable sellers. Now, if you already have that data, I would say do strategic launches for however many products it makes sense to split your ad budget across. So for example, if you're like, I only have $100 a day to spend in my ad budget and I have 10 million products, I would want to take that ad budget and I would want to pick only the top 1 to 2 products, because I want to be able to maximize that budget to really test. Now, if you have the rest of the catalog, or if you don't have those, like, very clear winners, what you can do is you can leverage auto campaigns. Now, again, this is like a use case specific strategy. But what you can do is you can take, I would even just take a subsection, because you can only realistically put 1,000 products in your, into an ad group. But I would take all of, like, a subsection of your products. I would throw those into an auto campaign, and then I would see which products sort of gain momentum and the ability, they're obvious clear winners. And then I would use that to determine sort of next steps of going more, building out more specific campaigns on those particular product lines. So I'm not sure if that was helpful. That was a really good question. Sounds like it's a lot to tackle. Very large catalogs. Yeah, we're very comfortable working in large catalogs, but yeah, the difficulties there is that the potential for the ad spend, if you were to, again, go pedal to the metal on everything, is going to be a lot. And most likely you're going to be running at a loss, because in the testing phase, not everything is going to work. would make it a little bit more difficult to figure out. So yeah, no, I appreciate the question, and I also appreciate all the follow-up comments. So yeah, for anyone listening in, if you have an Amazon ad question, or if you're curious on anything I said, again, feel free to type it in the chat, and I will make sure that you get your questions answered to the best of my ability. Yeah, and depending on how many questions we have today, we'll see how long this chat goes. I am booked out until 1 o'clock, which is a good 40 minutes or 50 minutes still to go, I guess. But yeah, one of the things that we're looking again when it comes to this holiday season is keeping on top of, like we said, ship times and conversion rates is going to be huge. One other thing you want to do, I can just explain some of the interesting tests that we're running for some of the clients' products, again, that we're looking to say capitalize additional sales volumes on. Is one thing we're doing is we're being really strategic with our budgets this time of year. I actually am really excited to release it. It's being edited right now, and I think we're scheduling it to be published. I did a really good I had a really good conversation with Mike Freaky from Perch about how to leverage budgets to be strategic with your ad spend, especially around these times. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. Awesome. Looks like we have another question from Ahmed. Thanks for all this information. Thanks for listening. You're what make this possible. So I appreciate you asking your question. This is a really good one. Do you recommend negating the keywords that is part of the exact match campaigns in phrase and broad? I do not. I do not recommend this strategy. The reason being is when you move things around, you can't always replicate the performance. And I have, I don't want to be as dramatic to say a horror story, but sometimes when you try and force something to work, it doesn't always work. And what you're doing when you preemptively add things as a negative, now there are some really good people who disagree with me. There are some really good people who agree with me on this, but I would say I don't negate. The one thing that we do is we attempt to keep the bids lower on the phrase match and the broad match, and then keep bids a little bit higher in exact match. That way we can attempt to funnel more traffic into our exact match campaigns. We do run that strategy to, again, try and be strategic with it. But as far as cutting it off, if it is performing, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that at all. So hopefully that helps. Again, if you have a follow-up question, feel free to ask. Here is Kim with a great question. Morning. Good morning. I have given a 10% bid increase for the placement with most sales, often product pages, but someone indicated they focus on click-through rate, thinking if they increase impressions, it would equal more sales. That is a good question. So that is the first one. And then the follow-up question is, what are your thought process when determining what placements to add bid adjustments? What time period do you look at? I know you are not a huge fan of bid adjustments, wondering why. That's a good thing. So it's not that I'm not a huge fan of the placement percentages. The one thing placement percentages do is they introduce a variable into the equation. Meaning, so if I had a list of 1,000, let's be dramatic. Let's say there was 1,000 keywords on there. I'm adjusting the placement percentages for all of those 1,000 keywords. And then if all of those 1,000 keywords were in, let's go extreme again, let's say a broad match. And then what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the potential for increasing cost per clicks on all of those 1,000 keywords multiplied times how many different search terms those broad matches would trigger. So as you can see, like the amount of variables, so like where is a good bid for me can rapidly change because I have all of these, again, variables that I've introduced into my sort of where my bid should be. And that's where I have issues with being really extreme with placements, because the more variables you introduce, the more difficult it is to really pinpoint what a good bid is going to be on that keyword. So that's my spiel on that. When determining placements, what time periods do you look at? I prefer to look at a good chunk of time, which would probably be, I would say, minimum 14 days. I like to look at 30 days. You would just want to kind of see the most data you can in these places without getting so far out. Like I I probably wouldn't look at lifetime. Again, depending on how long lifetime is. The reason for that is that with lifetime, I could be factoring in, like if I have 3 years of data, right? I'm looking at what happened 3 years ago and what happened this year. Like that's not going to give me really good optimal data. So I hope I clarified why I'm not a huge fan of bid adjustments. It's mostly that I think a lot of times they get applied, they're so blanket applied that they introduce too many variables. So there's little focus on the intentionality, meaning if I have a top keyword in exact match and I'm looking to be aggressive, we just launched a bunch of campaigns for that, for some top keywords in a product that we wanted to really look to see if we can leverage this high traffic and conversion rate time to push our rankings on. Those were exact match campaigns, high bids, top of search placements. There is a time and a place for it to be really, really intentional with leveraging placements. Let's see, I looked at the time period. Hopefully I understood why. And then as far as what people look at to determine if the top of search is going to make sense, we would look at conversion rates and we would look at ACoS is what we look at. I mean, we still look at ACoS. I know some people aren't a huge fan of like optimizing campaigns only for ACoS. There's a time and a place for looking at that. That would, again, we're also trying to factor that in with the conversion rates. As far as optimizing it off of click-through rate, I know there's a huge debate right now in the space as far as like how important click-through rate is to your campaigns. Yes, click-through rate is important. I don't like to optimize specifically for click-through rate. The reason why is because I've seen campaigns with like absolutely abysmal click-through rate and the sales and the ACoS were great. And so in that case, doesn't make sense for me to limit that campaign because click-through rate is bad when all other indicators that I care more about, i.e. sales and my profits on sales, which are my ACoS, look great. No, I'm not going to cut that off because I got optimized for click-through rate. That being said, click-through rate is really, really helpful to determine as a benchmark as to how well does my product in this placement on this search page resonate with the market. If I have a great click-through rate, that means, wow, they really like my offer when it appears on this search page. If I have a really bad click-through rate, then wow, the market does not like my product when it appears on the search page. And then that's an indicator maybe my targeting's off, maybe I'm not appearing in the correct spot. Maybe I can fix my main image. Maybe people think the price point's too high. There's lots of things you can look. So we use it as sort of an indicator, not something to be optimized for, if that makes any sense. That was a very long answer. Hopefully I answered your question. Cool. Yeah, so Ahmed had another question. He said, thanks for the answer. Sorry, I typed it wrong. So this was the question going back to if we negate things. Do you think I need to negate the keyword in the exact match cans and auto campaigns? No, we still don't negate it unless it has poor performance or there's some very limited circumstances and we're like, we must force this, but those cases are few and far between. Same thing I talked about with the auto. That we do with the broad and the phrase match is to keep bids lower in the autos and then, sort of force most of the impressions to happen through the exact match simply by keeping bids higher on those campaigns. But great follow-up to that as well. All right. Here's another great question. What other methods do you to increase brand awareness if already doing PPC? What is a quick win for you? Brand awareness, honestly, brand awareness is just you showing up a lot in sales. People talk about growing brands and there's this whole like awareness play that you can do. Just recognize that the profitability on awareness plays is always going to be a lot less. It always is. And so you just have to be ready to just mentally attack that sort of strategy. You got to be ready for it. If you go into sort of a brand awareness play and you then look at it and say like, oh, the conversion rate on this isn't great. then you're going to pull back, and you're basically, you're not going to get the full benefit of either one because you weren't going into it with the right mindset. So you typically set a little bit like lower ROAS targets for awareness plays. You're just recognizing that the conversion rate isn't going to be there. But really, I mean, unless you are a big brand and you haven't, if you fully maximized your sort of ad structure for more strategic like conversion rate plays, then yes, go brand awareness. If you are looking at more of a brand awareness, again, higher ad spend, lower ROAS type play, and you haven't already maximized your potential with, again, the other more conversion rate focused strategies, I would say that's the wrong call. I would want to fully maximize what, all the potential keywords, product page placements, et cetera, that I could with my ad budget, because that's going to get you farther. And then through you accelerating the sales on the product, you're going to get the product into more shopper hands. And if your product is good, that's going to lend to people talking about your product, more brand searches, and you will sort of inherently get a brand building side benefit to that caveat if the product is good. If you're selling a crappy product, if the user experience is not good, expect to have negative results of accelerating sales. Hopefully that was, again, any follow-up questions, feel free to and ask them in the chat. So I'm reading the chat here. All right, this is a long question. We have a new product. What do you think about the polling PPC strategy? It looks like you're probably still typing that in. So let me know. Yeah, I definitely, it is in the works. My team is like kicking me for not having it done sooner, but I do plan on putting out sort of some information on a really intensive, say, product launch strategy. All right. So how do you know once your sales are maximized? Once I have good ranking, on my main key terms, once I am targeting as much of the competition as I possibly can, and once I can look at, so I would use the, you can use Search Query Performance Report. You can look at Helium 10 for ranking. You can use brand metrics inside of the ad console to basically, what you're trying to do is say, how am I doing versus my competitors? And what percentage of the market share do I own? If your market share is like this, then you know that there's room to grow. If you're eating up a lot of the market share, then maybe you can use a brand awareness play to try and grow your market share. Yes. So follow-up question on that. Is there a sales ceiling? What strategy you recommend for brand ranking at number 1 for the category? Exact match, high bids, enough budget to run that throughout the day. Really. Your ranking is going to be determined by a couple things. One main one is your sales velocity. So you have to get, over an extended period of time, you need to drive more sales than your competitors. If you can drive more sales than your competitors through that specific shopper search, you will see an increase in your ranking. Now, if you are getting a lot of clicks and those clicks are not converting, so your conversion rate is not good, and your competitors are converting higher than you, then you are not going to see the impact on your ranking that you want to with what I just told you. But it's really just dumping money into appearing on that shopper search page. And then ideally you appearing there leads people to your listing. So that's where the clicks come, and then leads people to purchasing, which is where the conversions come. Ads drive traffic. The listing is what converts it to a sale. And so that's really how you have to think about it. Just like, how can I get more people who can view me on the search page and then will purchase through that search page? And again, you have to show that you're better than your competition in, again, for shoppers on that particular search. And that's how you're going to climb up the ranking. And follow-up questions on that, feel free to ask them in the chat. All right. So it looks like we have a long one. So there is a question on the product launches. So this was the question. There's a long question. We have a new product. What do you think about the following PPC strategy? Launching auto campaigns, close keywords, loose exacts for 3 long-term keywords. I have good potential. Launch exact campaigns for 3 long-term keywords I think have good potential and bid aggressively. Launch phrase and broaden out campaigns for 3 to 4 phrases, which are common between most of these product keywords. Yes, that could work. That could work. My question is, I don't know if I would differentiate those 3 to 4 phrases, which are common between this product's keywords. I assume the goal here is to identify long tail searches for these keywords. If looks like you're watching from a YouTube channel, I have a whole hour-long video about doing keyword research for product launches. Highly recommend going and checking that out. That will show you basically how we think about keywords. And I believe there's something in there about forecasting for ranking based on your budget. So I don't think it's a bad idea to look at 3 long tail keywords and that have good ranking potential and go after them aggressively. I'm assuming the budget is a little bit lower. That's fine. The only thing you have to be aware of if you're only going after long tail in the beginning is the search volume on those long tail keywords. And if there's not a lot of people searching, the potential for sales is going to be lower. So it's just setting expectations when it comes to that. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. Awesome. We're about 25 minutes in. Again, I'm going to be here for about another 30 minutes. I got more in the chat. Plenty of time still. If you want to drop your Amazon ad question, I'm going to take a drink and these Q&As are honestly some of my absolute favorites to do, but I always lose my voice. So hopefully I can sustain it over the next 30 minutes. Good question. So the question is I'm in a highly competitive niche where suppliers offer products at half the price. Those are difficult. With different packages, the PPC costs are rising. What other strategies can we explore in terms of PPC or other things? Does the price of our product play a role in winning bids or contributing to high PPC costs? So the price of your products will impact your ads only because it impacts your conversion rate. So as you can imagine with a lot of, and I very much sympathize. I do want to say I sympathize. I know you're in sort of a tough spot. It's really difficult when there becomes sort of like a price war in the space. So I will say, highly recommend, it's easy to say like, oh, just lower prices when I'm not the one having to struggle and deal with the margin repercussions of that. So, no, you won't necessarily be penalized based on if the price point is higher. It's just if your price point is higher, your conversion rate oftentimes in these cases will be lower because people are like, I'm just going to go get the cheaper one, right? So they're not going to convert. One thing that you can do is look for, again, sort of low cost. I don't know if you have any low cost long tail in your niche. Again, what you would have to do here is just set expectations of what the sales volume could be through those long tail keywords. Because again, the search volume is not going to be as high. Other things you can test, which again, if your price point's higher, who knows, you'll just have to test what the potential, like what your potential conversion rates are going to be, like, or performance wise. You can't touch product targeting. Has worked for us really well in these categories. Sometimes, again, depending on how well you convert on other people's listing pages. Other things you can do is look for strategies that might have more low bid. So like low bid autos, low bid category targeting, low bid broad match for some of your root terms. Again, with these strategies, if you get really good results, make sure you don't push your bids too high because that's going to change the strategy of these campaigns. What you're really just looking to do with these strategies is, can you get a higher volume of low cost clicks? That might be something to try. But yeah, as far as the product price changing what Amazon's going to make you pay for a bid, that's not a factor. It's more the conversion rates. All right. Again, trying to keep my voice sane here. Kim with another good question with a part 1 and a part 2. So in broad, I hear a lot of people divide single ad, single campaign into categories like high impression, high conversion rate, etc. How do you divide and when? Do you use on broad test campaigns per product, then move the keywords after a test period into a category, losing history? So no, I am not a fan of moving things around. I don't do that. Again, to your point of you're going to lose history on that. As far as dividing, yeah, so we use single campaign, single ad group, single product, meaning like single per listing. Now you did hear me answer sort of the original question from Monish about like you have a ton of products and they're not really sure where to start. And I told them like, group everything. So there are very limited cases where you kind of have to go outside of your usual strategies. And that's, again, why I love forums like this where people can ask questions. I can give more detailed, like specific answers. But again, when it comes to the structure, single campaign, single ad group, only one product line in there. When I say product line, I mean per listing. And then oftentimes only selection of products on that listing. I have a whole video on our YouTube channel about how do you advertise for variations. That's really insightful if you wanted to go check that out. But yeah, we don't move keywords around, meaning like take it and put it in a, go from broad match to a phrase match or exact match. Now, if we find a search term that's working in broad match and we think it makes sense to test an exact match, we will absolutely test in another campaign. So we'll create, again, single campaign, single ad group, single product line, putting in that search term as an exact. But to the other question I got asked is, hey, do you negate it? We won't negate it in the original because it's performing there and we don't want to mess with that performance. We're just saying like, hey, can we get more strategic and spend intentional with spending more on this one search page. And then I'm trying to read your part. To question about dividing campaigns. So we divide campaigns think of it as by strategy. So I'll give you an example, right? Say we're doing competitor research for a bunch of ASINs that we're going to target, right? If I find a bunch of ASINs that are ranking high on the keyword, say running shoe, right? I'm going to create a campaign again, single campaign, single ad group, single product line, and put all of those ASINs into that campaign. This does two things. One, it kind of just helps us make sense of our groupings. And then two, it also is a clue to me as the account manager to say, oh, this is the strategy that I'm trying to execute with this campaign. So for example, in the campaign name for the one I just described with all the different ASINs, I would say like top ranked ASINs running shoe, right? And I'll be like, oh, okay. So this is the product I'm specifically targeting these ASINs. There's a very clear strategy and intentionality around that. I could have taken all of maybe I did that research and then maybe I also strategically looked and said, oh, what are all of the new products that are appearing on running shoe, right? These are not the top ranked ones, but these are like the new products. I might get impressions for those. I might not because they're new and maybe they're doing a lot of aggressive testing of ads and maybe some of them aren't even running ads at all. But I might take those out and create a different campaign. Now, they're still all ASINs that I'm targeting. I'm still targeting them all with product targeting. It depends on how the account manager wants to run it. If I had a choice, though, I would put those in separate campaigns. Again, the rationale is that these are different strategies, right? So one of them is I'm targeting the higher ranked products for this keyword. Those ones might be more important to me. Maybe I want to make sure that I have high visibility there. So my bids are going to be higher. So consequently, my ACoS is probably going to be a bit higher. Well, with the new, the new products that are appearing on that search, maybe I don't want to overspend there because again, their traffic may or may not be there yet. And so in those cases, maybe I want to have just an understanding that, okay, these are the new products. So I'm going to group them. And the reason why grouping campaign is helpful because it lets me kind of know, oh, that's where I found this. This is my logic and this is the strategy being run. So I would think of it that way. Like again, we like to group it out by products, so we're not mixing a bunch of different products. And just for everyone listening's clarification, when I say mixing products, I mean products from different listings. I'm not a huge fan of that. Again, there are extenuating circumstances, but generally speaking, try not to mix products in campaigns. Again, or child ASINs from different listings, I guess is probably a more clear way to put that. But as far as how we would choose to like group campaigns, Kim, hopefully that makes sense. Feel free to ask a follow-up question if you have one. This is a great question. Do you have any success with day parting strategies to manage ad spend in more efficient times of day? Yes. We are testing day parting on some of our accounts, and it's working really well. It really depends on how much data you have. So you want to make sure that you are making database decisions and be like, oh, I feel like I get less sales at XYZ times of day. I wouldn't do it like that. I would go in. We use a software tool called KPOC. It's called KAPOQ. It's a really good tool. And with that one, it actually gives you conversion rates by hour, and also broken down by day throughout the week. And of course, it's an aggregate of all the conversions. And that can be helpful. If you do not have access to a software, now this is only for sponsored product ads, but there is a report you can download. If you go into it, it's the campaign report for sponsored products. That one you can actually pull out hourly, and you're going to have to run a pivot table or something to sort of like aggregate all of the data. I would break it down because each campaign is probably not going to have enough hourly data for you to make a really good decision versus potentially if you like aggregated all of it, you might have enough information to make a decision per hour. So that's how I would look at it. Now, implementing the day parting, gosh, you're going to want to do that with the software. There's two ways to implement day parting. One of them is simply adjusting or pausing or unpausing of campaigns. You can adjust the budgets or you can adjust the bids. I believe at this point we're pausing and unpausing things during certain hours. But anyways, hopefully that was helpful. That's a great question though. Day parting is definitely a hot topic now that we have hourly data available to us, which has kind of been a game changer because before we said like, oh, we like to do things based on data, and day parting has been around for a long time. Actually, day parting has been discussed in the Amazon ad community for a very long time, longer than you would think. And also there's been software tools that have the capabilities to automate day parting for a long time, long before hourly data came out. And that was always the pushback against it, is there's no clear way to look at data and statistics and say, this makes absolute sense for us to implement. It was kind of a let's test it in really loosey-goosey, where now you have much clearer data to be able to make those decisions on. Now, the variables are how much data does the account have, meaning how much spend and clicks. When we're talking about data, I'm talking about spend and clicks. And so there it gets a little bit wonky. And the other things that do kind of change things is the sales attribution windows of the ads. So if you're aware, like Amazon advertising, you can have a sale attributed to a click up to 7 days after that click actually occurred. And within sponsored brands and sponsored display, it's 14 days. So some people say like, hey, even if ads aren't running, some people add stuff to cart. So I might start getting the click at like, 2 a.m. when they're scrolling on their phone and they can't sleep, but then they'll go and make the purchase in the morning at like 9 a.m. when they're eating their breakfast, right? So that sale, if you're looking at the hourly data, is going to be attributed to that 9 a.m. when in actuality, my 2 a.m. ad influenced the sale. So, I mean, you are going to end up with stuff like that. But I mean, this is the case with working with Amazon and their attribution windows and their data and how they choose to report it. It's not always a one-to-one. I think we have enough data at this point that we can have much more educated decisions on what we're doing for day parting. Great question. Ahmed said, what should be my I'm assuming bidding strategy, or did you mean betting strategy? Because I can talk about betting. We've advertised for betting before. I have some good insights and things that work really well in that category. But so what should be my, I'm assuming, bidding strategy for our search volume keywords in launch time, the one my competitor ranked 1 to 11 in organic. So when we're doing launch strategy, our preferred bidding strategy is fixed bids. I like fixed bids. Fixed bids will help you gain more impressions, which in the beginning, that's what you're looking to do. You want to get impressions on your products to be able to ideally get clicks and then have those convert to sales. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. Cool. Looks like we got some questions still rolling in. Got about 20 minutes left. So anyone has a good Amazon ad question, feel free to type in the chat. We definitely got time. Coffee's getting cold, but I definitely need to save my voice. All right. Good question here. How to reduce total A costs once a product is ranked? Good question. So total A cost is lowering your spend. Total A cost is a mathematical equation, which is your ad spend divided by your ad sales. So what you are trying to achieve here is how can I reduce my ad spend and not screw up my sales velocity? So how you would do that? I mean, the easiest way to do that when you're looking to reduce total A costs is to lower anything that is not generating sales. Those are pretty easy. So go and look at all the keywords that you're not generating sales on. How can I lower those? That should be an ongoing and continuous optimization cycle. I mean, we do that quite a few times a week in the agency for like all the products across everything, because it's pretty important to keep on top of that. The other thing that you can do, there's two schools of thought here. One, you can also leverage reducing your budgets. That might be something to test. But the other thing you can do is lower bids on things that you have already ranked on others. I've explained this in other lives before. There's two ways of doing this. One is way more manual and it's really difficult. The other one is much easier to do at scale. And so it's typically my default. The one is to okay, what keywords am I ranked high on? And then I can go and look, say, okay, I'm showing on the top placement. Let me lower my bids. How can I get to middle of the page, bottom of the page, and do it that way? That way it's very incremental. You have to constantly check the search pages and adjust your bids and then go back and look, and it's a whole thing. And it's, to be honest, pretty obnoxious and absolutely unscalable. When I say unscalable, I mean it's impossible to do across a lot of products on a huge account. And so if we have a keyword that is really important, we noticed if we drop below page 1 in our advertising, we absolutely dive bomb our sales. I would do the first method because it's really important. Second method, a lot more scalable, a lot easier, is to lower your ACoS targets for your ranked keywords. Example, I have a keyword that I have achieved ranking on, and I'm running at let's go crazy. Let's say it's a 40% ACoS, right? Because I'm in more ranking mode. I would simply say, okay, let's take that 40% ACoS, and I wouldn't go crazy. I would be like, oh, I'm going to target 20% ACoS. That's going to chop your bids, and you're going to lose all visibility. What you want to do is slowly, incrementally lower it. So I'm going to say, all right, right now I'm doing 40%. Let's go to, maybe we'll go 36%, 37. It depends on how important this keyword is to the product. If it's not as important, I would say, hey, let's target a 35, right? So what you're doing is you're lowering your ACoS targets. Lowering your ACoS targets on those keywords is going to naturally lower your bids, and you're going to slowly start walking your bids back. If you're using, a bid software, algorithms, etc., most of them will go off a target ACoS, and then you, again, just slowly lower down what your target is, and then watch your rankings, watch your sales velocity. If you're noticing impacts on ranking or sales, then you bump it back up to where it was before, and then you go about it that way. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, follow-up questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Cool. This is a good question. Based on your experience with highly competitive niches, how many clicks needed to get a sale? I know it could appear as the no answer question, but let's say on average, yeah, I'm not even going to be able to give you an answer here because it's so varied, but I will give you a place to find the answer. Where you want to go and look for your answer is inside your, now product has to be brand registered for this, but if you are brand registered, you want to go into the advertising console, search your You want to search in your brand. Now the words are going to escape me. Brand metrics. That's the word. Go into the ad console, look at brand metrics. It select the category for this particular product. It is going to tell you what the average conversion rate is for that category. Look at your averages and then just say, that's the average I'm looking to hit. What we've noticed is that if your conversion rates are falling below the average for your category, then your products really will struggle to rank. And then if you can get better than your category, that's where you really start to accelerate on the ranking. Kim says, thank you. So yes, I appreciate it. Thank you for asking the questions. It was a really good one. Cool. All right, this is a great one. I have a client with poor, in my judgment, product listings, title description, A+ content missing. Goodness. Fair to say I should focus on improving listings before doing much on ads? Absolutely. A great way to illustrate this to the client is, again, of course, if they're brand registered, I don't know, it sounds like they have access to A+ content, so in that case, they would be brand registered. I would show them their converted, because if you have a poor listing, it's probably not converting, right? So I would show them, hey, this is what you're doing versus your competitors in the brand metrics for your category. You're way behind. Even if I drive traffic, you're paying for all of that traffic and little to none of it is converting. If you want to go crazy with it, I like spreadsheets and mathematics. That's my happy place and my jam. So I would probably, if you want to go, again, I'm coming to realize that's my comfort place. A lot of people don't feel comfortable doing those kind of things. I like the mathematics. So what you can do is you can calculate the number of clicks needed to convert by 1 divided by your conversion rates. So the lower the conversion rate, the more amount of clicks it takes you to convert, right? And then so you could actually do those mathematics and see okay, look, right now our conversion rates are, let's go crazy, let's go 4%, right? Super low. Our category average is 10%, right? Look how many less clicks it takes for us to generate a sale at this average. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to shoot for the averages. I need to fix these things before I can do it. Whenever you can illustrate with screenshots, market data, cold, hard, this is the way it is. And better yet, not only here's the problem I've discovered, but here's my solution for it in the term of listing optimization, and you're able to provide that solution. That's going to be a win for you and a win for the client. Another great question, how to deal with high clicks in which cost per clicks high ticket in which costs per clicks are very high. Good question. So high ticket typically means that conversion rates are lower because the more somebody has to pay for something, the more they are going to evaluate that purchase. And so the more shoppers you're going to get clicking around. The one thing that we do when we have products with a high ticket items, and what you'll see is one day it costs crazy and the next day it's 2%. And then the day after that it's 50%. And the day after that it's 10%, and you're I can't make sense of this because I can't optimize daily and I don't want to miss anything. Look at longer date ranges being last 30 days or so to evaluate the performance of things. I would do that. And then where cost per clicks are really high, I mean, honestly, unless the conversion rate of the product is so crappy that it offsets all of the benefits, if you have a higher ticket item, you can in a lot of ways absorb higher cost per clicks, because a 20% margin on a $5 product is going to be a heck of a lot lower than a 20% margin on a $200 product. So a lot of times you can absorb that. At that point, I would say if I'm doing anything, I'm looking at longer date ranges, and then just are there any keywords in the space that have lower cost per clicks, long tail, all of that. You can look at it. All right, so LinkedIn user said something about Bedford brand registry is underway. We aren't even getting featured offers yet. On my end, it comes up as LinkedIn user, so I'm trying to figure out, was this your other question about the poor listings and trying to get data on that? If you have another client that has access, no, search query reports isn't going to do it. Let's see. I mean, in this case, what you could do is you could look at the top sellers in the space and simply compare your. I'm assuming that follow-up question was to, or follow-up comment really, was to the one about the poor listing quality. If that's the case and you don't have access to the brand metrics, what I would do is I would look at the top ranked products on on your search pages that you would typically go after. And then I would just compare, like, hey, look, this is what our listing looks like. This is what the top competitors listing looks like. And by the way, look how great their sales are. Now don't promise that you're going to get the top competitor sales equivalents, but I mean, at least show them like, hey, this is how much better you could be doing. You're really just looking to showcase what the market what the market demands kind of are in terms of listing quality is where those things get helpful. So hopefully that was answering, gave you context on what to do if you don't have brand registry, unless that was the question where it was talking about, no, it looks like it was another LinkedIn user who had the 10 million products and what to do with ads on that. Cool. So if anyone has any follow-up questions, Ahmed said, thank you for all your answers. Thank you for the questions. Again, this is one of my favorite segments. I'm always really feel really blessed and honored when people actually show up to these things. I'm always starting off like, I wonder if anyone's going to have any questions or I can be helpful. So yeah, you guys continuously showing up here, asking these questions, and me, again, hopefully giving you informative answers means the world to me, and I really, really appreciate it. So for anyone wondering, I am putting these on every single Thursday. Same time, same place. So feel free. These, by the way, also get recorded and pushed out to our YouTube channel. So if anyone has any, ever wants to rewatch something, or if you missed the beginning and you're like, oh, she referenced something she said, and I think, maybe I should go back and watch, you can always feel free to check the recordings on our YouTube channels. And yeah, we got about 10 minutes left here. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We still got time, but yeah, as always, I really appreciate everyone showing up and interacting, because these are honestly my favorite things to do, for sure. Cool. Yep, I'm going to give it a couple more minutes, and if nothing else comes up in the chat, then we'll probably end a couple minutes early. But either way, I really appreciate everyone showing up and asking such awesome questions. Because again, you all and are what make these things possible. So. Awesome. Well, yeah, again, I appreciate everyone joining. Make sure you catch the replay on the YouTube channel or tune in next week, same time, same place on Thursdays for another Amazon ads. Feel free to save up those questions, drop them in the chat. And yeah, if anyone's interested in checking us out, again, the reason why I know so much about Amazon ads is because we run an Amazon ad agency. Check the link on the wall behind me. And yeah, we will see you in the next one. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much.